Cool. Ready for day 2 at PAX?
There we go.
You gonna stand up or not?
I can make it stand up.
Hi, we're from Wētā Workshop. We've been making tots now for quite some time. I'm Tony Lawrence. I'm the studio director. That was Ladle.
Ladle overboard.
I'll get the others to introduce themselves. Kat?
Hi, I'm Calliope Ryder, and let's do that so I don't have to pretend that I'm tall. And I am the lead producer of Tales of the Shire.
I'm Steve Lambert. I'm the art director.
My name's Catherine Booth. I'm a game designer.
And yeah, you know who I am. Yeah, let's get into it, right? So, look, can you speak to something about the game? Can you tell us about some of the game features that you've been working on for all this time?
Who goes first?
I think we should start with the designer.
Start with the design.
Yeah, all right. So yeah, Tales of the Shire is a cozy Hobbit life sim where I think sort of the tent pole of the game for me is cooking. It's a really strong feature of the game, and it's really kind of what, for me, the gameplay revolves around. So cooking, sharing meals with your friends, fishing, gardening, exploring the bywater area. It's all kind of there, yeah.
Decorating yourself and others.
Yeah, making a hobbit hole, becoming like one with your kind of inner hobbit, and just living as a hobbit as close as possible.
So we've put quite a lot of intentional effort into the designing of how you can be a hobbit, but be yourself, but still feel like you completely belong in the Shire. So yeah, it's completely about embodying a hobbit in the Shire in a cozy way.
Something I guess is that I tend to forget about, because when you're developing a game, you kind of get stuck in on what you're working on, and it's sometimes hard to see the big picture, see the forest for the trees. But something that I know the team is super, super proud of is the home decoration system that we have. It's super fleshed out. The CV art team has done so much stuff for you to decorate your house with.
I don't know if anyone's ever really lived in a place with curved walls, but it's a nightmare to decorate. And
yeah, trying to put a painting up, and it's
so let's build an entire system around round rooms with curved walls and curved everything. And it's the minute you do that, you go, well, there's this trying to do anything on a grid or anything regimented that way is just going to not work. So how do we build something that's going to be really kind of flexible and expressive and breaking away from typical grid systems. Yeah.
It's really it was a very interesting challenge as well with the placement system, because we really wanted it to feel we wanted you to feel like you could really make your home really cluttercore, right? Like you could stack all of your little trinkets up, you could collect all your hobbity things. Cozy spaces often, feel like they are completely of the person who lives there, and that means quite a bit of stuff. And that was, doing a system that was an all-around space with lots of stuff, lots and lots of stuff, and lots of options for stuff on the walls and things, and then having no grids and having it completely free-form placing for the player. That was a really interesting challenge, but I'm pretty proud of how we pulled it off.
Yeah, I think you took placing anything anywhere very seriously.
Yeah. There's a lot of freedom. I think from my perspective, just the sheer volume of items. As a designer, I have to decide how you get those items. How are they rewarded to you? How do you achieve them? And I had to find where I would put all of those things. So there's lots of just so much decoratable stuff that you can get.
We had to kind of rein in the art team a little bit, because we'd sit there and you'd come up with a list of another 20 items, and the design team would go, oh Jesus, what
the producer is
stop, just stop making things.
And not just the design team, but also the narrative team as well, because they have to write descriptions for all of these items. So there's just hundreds of words, hundreds and thousands
Please,
of
we
words.
need to look for localization soon.
So
Please stop making more items.
Yeah, and then optimize it for everything.
Yes.
It was interesting from a design and art challenge too, of how to create a system where you're giving people as much expression and freedom as you want, but also making it reasonably easy to interact with and use, because you'll have one kind of user who wants to just put a table or a bookshelf there and wants it beautifully decorated, like a finished item with all the bits and pieces on it, and then you'll have someone who wants to sit there and shift a teacup to the 10 degrees to the right and rotate it just so it's trying to find that balance of usability and also, and this is my control freak side coming out, I want it to look a certain way and I want it to look good, but also letting obviously people have the player have fun making it the way they want to look. So.
Yeah, cool. You mentioned before cooking and gardening are important aspects of Tales of the Shire. Why is that?
Because if you were a hobbit, what would your hobbies be? They would be cooking, they would be gardening, they would be standing around in a field, reading a book. So when we were thinking of sort of our pillars for this game, food is love is kind of one of them. It's more of a phrase than a single word pillar, but it meant that we wanted cooking to be cooking and sharing meals to be the focus, but also the gardening component of it serves there's a few different good reasons for it. So gardening feeds into your cooking. You're growing all of the things that you'll be cooking with. But not only are you just growing things you'll cook with, it kind of feeds into decoration as well, right? Because you can have your little hobbit garden and you can plant tons of different vegetables, herbs, all kinds of different things, flowers. So it's not just about gardening feeding into your cooking, it's also gardening feeding into your decoration and customization and personalizing. You can really make your garden.
Yeah, we want it to be an aesthetic kind of choice of how you create a beautiful garden, not only for produce, but just because become part of the personalization of your house.
And one of the things that we tried to keep in mind when we were designing and balancing the gardening aspect is making it friendly to personalization. So if you plant some flowers and you decide, oh wait, now I want to move those flowers over there, making sure that you kind of get that flower back so you can then plant it and grow another one later instead of kind of having a cost decision involved in that. So everything in the game has been made as cozy as possible from that perspective.
I think with cooking and gardening specifically, the reason why it's so important is because it is a Hobbit life sim. So there's a lot of classic life sims, some features that we've really looked at from the angle of through a Hobbit's eyes, right? So, we don't have farming, we have gardening. We have the small cute version of it. It's not about min-maxing and making a huge, having exclusively corn, so that it's not about getting your corn pipeline going or figuring out how to make the maximum amount of coffees so that you can just run everywhere. It's very much about taking the, I guess, more capitalist, larger scale, production features that you often find in life sim games and reinventing them through the eyes of someone who is in a very cozy, small community, who is very comfortable with their lot and is just completely about making their corner of the world of Middle-earth a beautiful place to be. Not farming, it's gardening. We don't have really intense, large-scale systems that you would want to min-max. It's more about how can you engage and have relationships with the neighbors and the people around you. Like Kat said, the things that are really important to a hobbit are being in your garden, growing the biggest pumpkin,
and cooking for your friends.
Yeah, and the hobbit size thing is something that permeates through the entire game, right? So obviously in the world of Middle-earth and the world of Lord of the Rings, there's really serious epic things going on. It's really big stories. Everything is very everything is at risk, right? Everything is at stake in these huge epics. And that's those are really big conflicts. And so in Tales of the Shire, it's the small corner of this beautiful world that obviously everything is trying to protect. But it's the biggest conflict that you'll get here is who has the biggest pumpkin. It's
or how much someone's flour costs compared to someone else's.
Very Hobbit-sized problems and conflicts compared to the rest of the world, which I think is, that really lends itself to the way that we've designed everything.
Yeah, that Hobbit-sized conflict is it's the small-town dramas that become the things that everyone gets really worked up about,
nosy neighbours.
The nosy neighbours,
The sackful baggins.
Sackful bagginses taking spoons.
No, cool. Wētā Workshop's been around since 1987. The game studio hasn't been around that long. But what's different about working for Wētā Workshop and making games?
Oh, as a game dev, I can't say that I've ever worked somewhere that has a forge down the road.
We'll get
I've
back
never
to
been
it.
able to. I've never. Yeah, I can't say that's ever happened. Or just walk past the prosthetics department. There's so many amazing, unique things that Workshop does that would be completely inaccessible to almost like any other game dev, I guess. Like, I certainly haven't worked anywhere that has access to the wide range of talent, especially in the physical space that we do. And it's so interesting and exciting and awesome to be able to take that wide range of skill set and reapply it, or find ways to use it and utilize it with our games. So we've borrowed our writer Darren. We borrowed him from the location-based services. And now he's our writer. We've borrowed people from the 3D department. We've borrowed people from the merch department to design really cool merch for us. We've worked with people in the we've worked with swordsmiths for our animators to take videos of, to design the animations for our dwarf Neffy. So there's just access to this really wide range of skill sets and expertise that is not common for a dev to have access to. And then obviously there's a whole lot of Lord of the Rings lore and expertise that's just sort of sitting around everywhere. People who've been working in this space for 20 plus 30 years, it's pretty wild. To be able to just call on these people as lore experts, even as a super fan myself, I would say, and hear their opinions and expertise and work through problems with them. So yeah, it's pretty different, but.
I've talked before about the kind of the physical aspects of working in a workshop like that, but also it's a philosophical kind of approach to design, which we've been entrusted not only with Middle Earth, but other properties where the world building and effort and attention that we go into this building anything is kind of integral to the way we approach any project. It's a mindset of just not thinking about the surface details. It's really thinking about how anything comes to being. Like if you've got anything that you put into a fantasy world, what's its use there? How's it been kind of made? How has it gotten to where it is now? And just trying to bring that kind of sense of history and feeling to anything we put into any product, and that's you don't always see that, and I think that's a really important part of Workshop.
It helped us a lot when we made our teaser trailer. We took a bit of a risk for a not live action game. We made a live action teaser trailer, but we just scounged around and found all the people and built a Hobbit whole. We built a entire little Hobbiton setup in our photo department room, and we're able to just have everyone jump on board and make really wild special effects. We had incredible leather work and make the Tales of the Shire book.
It exists on Steve's desk.
Yeah.
We can go and look at it
It's
whenever
now
we
my
want.
precious. I have to, every time anyone steals it from me, I take it back. Yeah.
People always come by, take photos of it. You're like, okay, now we put
Now
Or someone
we
writes
put
and
it
is
back.
where is the book at this time?
Yeah. To that point, and the way the people kind of construct things, I don't think our publisher really knew what they had in store with us, because they would be expecting us to do the game, but had no idea that the rest of the workshop would lean into this kind of that physical production and kind of lean into those other aspects of our skill set.
Yeah, it's been great. You mentioned Darren before, who, in his spare time, happens to be a Tolkien scholar who is at Oxford 6 weeks of the year. The lore is so deep within Wētā, you really have to turn around to someone. Is this how it should be? And you'll have
Someone will answer
10
you.
different opinions instantly.
very quickly.
Yes.
You will know very fast. Especially if you try to put Ents in the Shire.
Yeah.
Alas.
Not the right time. That was a correct answer, I think. I guess what's your approach to world building? Having all the Wētā around you, where we basically build worlds for many different things, using all the skills or the experiences that everyone from the studio has. How did you put that into Tales of the Shire?
Oh, why don't you just this question? Well, I think that, I'm kind of speaking for the artists here, but something that comes to mind straight away is that the space of Bywater that you experience, that you're running around in, was almost as directly as possible lifted straight out of the books. So we had to quite finely sort of balance lore accuracy with an actually like enjoyable player experience. I think, Steve, you can probably speak more to that. You told the story yesterday about like the sun and stuff. I didn't even know
Yeah,
that.
I mean, obviously we've got the physical descriptions as written in the books, but then we start to kind of bring in a lot of the other kind of back history that Tolkien's referred to into different aspects, like the Númenóreans having lived there much earlier, and the Dwarves having built the Great East Road and everything. It's just, taking all those aspects and working backwards, and it's sort of, you become almost like an archaeologist within this fantasy world, and there'd be these little groves of kingsfoil and other things that we would go, well, okay, when the Númenóreans were here, and the kind of the structures and the forms that they built into the landscape, what was left behind. We've got a few forts that are old ruins from their existence, and then just the locations of the plants. Like you go into any crazy backcountry English area, and there's so much deep history in the land and what you think looks natural is actually often being kind of put there by people hundreds and thousands of years before. So it's kind of, how do we imbue that into how we've built out the landscape while still being a fun and interesting place to run around.
Yeah, I think so we talked about cooking, gardening, fishing. Foraging is one that I didn't mention before, and I should have, because it's a huge amount of it was my work. Forgot about that one. So coming into like the plants and locations and things like that, we had like all of the things you can forage in the game have been hand placed by me. So that was a lot of interesting work, but we've tried really hard to make sure that like when you're finding mushrooms, like for that type of mushroom, it makes sense for where in the world you can find it. Sort of balancing lore building and things that you need for the games has been something front of mind for me as a designer, because say if we want to get something like lemons, which is really important for our cooking system, but lemons aren't really something that grow in...
There was like 6 months of debates about
yes,
citrus.
this was a hot topic.
Tomatoes, no tomatoes. Lemons, no lemons.
Lemons, I'm sure that there were a few other things, but lemons is one that comes to mind, because we were like...
Lemons was the big one.
Yeah, lemons was huge because Darren was like, well, lemons aren't something that grow in like the Shire, like how would they get there? We do have one of our characters, Hobson, he's sort of a traveling salesman, so he helps bring in, that's how we kind of got in some of those far out kind of seasonings that you wouldn't find in sort of
it's one of those strange folk who comes from Brie occasionally.
So he goes around finding
with
things
these
for you.
exotic lemons.
But yeah, lemons we had to sort of think about, okay, if lemons are going to grow in the Shire, how would we get that in? So I won't spoil the story because there's world building to discover about that, but yeah, that's one of the things that we had to think really carefully about how we do some sort of creative problem solving around how we bring those things into the world while still staying true to the lore.
Yeah, and when it doesn't get just that, it's also seasonal as well. So
Yeah.
different things are available in different seasons. It's quite extensive.
There was definitely a few conversations where we did we brought in Dan Falconer and Sir Richard Taylor, and we spoke to them about hey, here's something that we would love to share with the player. Here's something that we want the player to be able to enjoy. How can we sort of build this feeling into the game, whilst also making sure that it fits with both Tolkien's intention and also the actual books that we're pulling from. And so there was really interesting. We've had some really interesting conversations where there's just black and white photos of Warwickshire and Birmingham and the countryside around where where Tolkien grew up, and we're looking at exactly what he would have been able to have access to, and looking at the mill, and being able to really draw on all these historical points, and then also turning to the books and being okay, so we've got the Stores, the Fallowhides, then the Harfoots, how would those three tribes of Hobbit merge together, and how would they have moved down, and where would they have come from, and they all have different characteristics, and how can we make how can we interpret what Tolkien wrote about them in the way that we design and dress and show hobbits in Bywater? So there's a lot that has gone into every single decision that you see in the game, especially from the perspective of world building and of lore. We went pretty deep every time.
It's half the challenge is actually working out what to interpret in between the details too. What's written is you find a description of Bilbo or of Bag End, and you go, okay, well, his door's described as this, and he's described as wearing this, and Or I think it's Frodo who is afraid of water because his
parents
were drowned and everything. So people tend to kind of build a picture, okay, well, Hobbit's afraid of water, or the doors have this type of door handle. And it's like, to my mind, like, well, whenever you read a book, you kind of build a picture in between the things that are described. And our job is to kind of go, okay, well, that's one thing that is really well described. What's something else that fits in this world? I mean, you don't think of, if you think of any kind of period in history and pick out one description someone's given you of something, you don't think that everything looks like that. So what is sympathetic to the descriptions as written and what works well within that? The water one was a really good one. There was a bit of an argument about whether or not hobbits would ever be on boats or anything because of the comment about Frodo. But then I was rereading something again the other day, and it was, Sam's family, I think, comes from a family with boats and fishing and everything, and they were, was it Sam?
The Stores.
Hang on a minute,
I'm not sure if it was Sam, but the Store tribe of hobbits.
Yeah, so
are the ones who are fishermen.
So how do you kind of bring in those aspects and widen the flavour, right? So that you're not just this monotonous kind of the same thing over and over again.
Mm. And then sometimes we just, take those boats, and instead of worrying about whether we go out in the water or not, we just make garden beds.
Yeah, we'll turn it into a garden bed instead.
Yeah, like the Lord of the Rings universe is vast. It's huge. How did you get down to like deciding on the Shire and a cozy game specifically?
I think I wasn't there at this time, but Tales of the Shire was concepted at a time where a lot of people were locked inside. A lot of people were longing for a rural, cozy life. A lot of people really wanted to go and touch grass, but were locked in apartments. And a lot of people were also really enjoying and discovering games again, like if they had previously been too busy and wrapped up in their everyday life to sort of sit down with a cozy game and just chill out of it. A lot of people were rediscovering that. So there was that angle of it, which was just like the time and the place of the world and sort of what people seemed to be yearning for, I think. And then also the other angle is just there's a lot of people who, as we've been developing this, have been posting on Twitter and Reddit, been like, wouldn't it be cool? Wouldn't it be great if, I've got an idea. Stardew Valley, but hobbits. And or pick any kind of cozy kind of farming-ish game, but hobbits. And we're like, shh, we're building it. Like, shut up.
Yeah.
We're trying.
I think
we know that people really want this, but shut up. Shh.
I think as someone who came into the project, probably most recently out of you three, when I was told about what the project was, my actual reaction was like, well, that's a no-brainer. Why hasn't someone already done this?
Why hasn't this been made before?
But I think, I can't remember where I was going with that comment, but yeah, it just seemed, I think, yeah, this is it. I feel like in game dev, it's somewhat rare to work on a project that you genuinely would spend hours and hours and hours in yourself. And I think that something that's really cool and special about our team is that we're actually making something that we thought was a good idea originally. No one said, hey, make this game. It was us coming together and saying, let's do this will be really fun. And we were just really lucky that someone else thought that was a good idea and let us make it.
Someone else's.
And as to why the Shire, I mean, the Shire sort of embodies that kind of tranquil, kind of almost world away from everything else. It's that kind of cottage country, kind of sunny day. I mean, we've got obviously weather, all sorts of weather happening, but even the rain should feel like that kind of warm, kind of wrapped up kind of winter feel that you can hide away from the world. And then also there's a sort of age of innocence that kind of goes. I sort of alluded to this yesterday. An age of innocence of before the fall of kind of the wider world, and to really kind of highlight this space that's special and should be kind of protected. And that's the core of the Lord of the Rings is the protection of that that special space within the world.
Yeah, the Shire is the thing that, I remember rereading The Hobbit quite recently, and it feels like every second line Bilbo is like, I miss my pantry, I miss home.
my napkins.
He's constantly having a whinge about being everything that he's missing from home, right? And then obviously in The Lord of the Rings, it's a lot more seriously okay, now we're going to protect that home. We need to protect the Shire. You hear the line of there won't be a Shire. You can't tap out of this because there won't be a Shire, and that's the most important thing to the hobbits. And to be able to, like, because our game actually sits in the time frame in between those two huge epics, it's a really nice place to play with because there's past history that we can reference. There's also future stuff that we can kind of like allude to without it actually having any impact yet.
Yeah.
It's a really creative space to be able to work within, and but it's also, yeah, as Steve was saying, it's still that innocent space. It's still really wholesome. There's no Nazguls around the corner just yet. Like everything is still in a pretty good place. And the other thing is that, like, you know, there's a lot of really good Lord of the Rings games out there already, right? And a lot of them have this, like, and rightfully so, have this very epic feeling, this very like grimdark fantasy feeling. It's heavy, it's serious, it's intense, and you know, we wanted the opportunity, I guess, to deliver something that people who love that world and love that lore can still engage with in a, like, you know, very similar way. But if they were potentially wanting to just, you know, chill out a little bit, I mean, you know, and not be fighting for, you know, the survival of the entire world all the time, that it might be quite nice to just worry about growing the largest pumpkin for a little bit.
Yeah. So the game's about being a hobbit. What are the quirkier things there are to being a hobbit?
We had a lot of fun. It's kind of your answer, Steve, but as the artist, doing all of the customization for hobbits. Of course, you can customize your hobbit feet.
Feet, yeah.
Yeah, it was really important. Like, it was like, well, if you're going to customize your character, you're going to have to customize your hobbit hair. You know, how far do you go with that? It's interesting. Do you plait your hobbit foot hair? Do you beat it? Yeah.
It's nice to kill it. There's also some, like, quite interesting things though about, like, where we really stuck to the lore that I do wonder how many people would notice. So, for example, like, hobbits don't have beards. And, you know, like, I know that for a lot of people, they'll be like, oh, why can't I customize my face? It's like, because you're a hobbit. Specifically because you're a hobbit. Whereas, you know, Neffy's just there showing off her impressive beard all the time, looking absolutely fabulous. But yeah, there's things like that, and like hobbits all have curly hair, right? So, like, all of our styles of hair that Steve designed, like, they all have this texture and this curly wave that, or like to different degrees, but they've all got that wave because that's like quintessentially hobbity.
It's quite an interesting design challenge to kind of work within what are quite restrictive kind of limitations and make sure that something fits within a world and is believable while still giving, you know, as much flexibility as possible. And we certainly hope to kind of be able to expand upon that in the future.
Yeah, and as a game designer, it's quite challenging because you, especially in like cozy life sim games, players expect a lot of customization capability. They expect to be able to really represent themselves in the game that they're playing. But we also knew that the lore pillar was so important. Like, we knew that you guys would notice all of these little details, and we had to really weigh up, okay, how do we, like, let's make sure that we balance really well as much customization as we can give you while also being as true as we can to the lore.
Like, there's no mohawks. You know, like,
Yeah.
I feel like that's not a spoiler.
I'm sorry, there's also no pink hair, I'm sorry.
Unfortunately, yeah, I cannot have
no
pink
mohawks.
hobbits. But speaking of like color palette and everything, like even the clothes that we've created for the hobbits, they all had to sort of stick to a certain vibe.
Yeah, autumnal and that beautiful, like,
Greens
colours
and
that
yellows
feel like they
and-
fit within the environment.
Yeah.
It was an interesting technical challenge as well because we wanted to be able to have things that could layer upon all sorts of other stuff. And I don't know if anyone else out there has ever built a system that requires for that level of complexity, but the minute you add that kind of level of variation of one thing that fits on top of another, and then potentially a third thing that fits underneath that, it's just this exponential curve of craziness that you start to kind of go, oh God, let's just make them all wear the same thing.
You're all in pants and waistcoats. That's all.
Yeah.
Like, it's often said, like, as a newcomer to New Zealand, which I'm loving, everyone should go. How important is Lord of the Rings to New Zealand or to Wētā Workshop or to the game? Like, is Wellington actually Hobbiton?
I think it's kind of become like our own
Matamata
local
is.
kind of-
Yeah, technically Wellington is not Hobbiton, but it's nearby.
Matamata, yeah. Rivendell is actually...
Rivendell is very close, yeah.
Everything's only like an hour's drive away.
Yeah,
Yeah,
literally.
New Zealand, everything's pretty close. I mean, personally, like, I grew up with Lord of the Rings being part of the identity already. Like, I think I was about 5 or 6 when the first movie came out. So there was definitely, like, yeah, a national identity of being the place that Lord of the Rings was filmed, and also of, like, representing Middle-earth in this really special way. Because, yeah, when I went travelling, the two things that people knew about New Zealand, if they did know that New Zealand existed at all, was either rugby or Lord of the Rings. Those are the two things that I'd get like, oh, All Blacks, or
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
And they'll be like, does New Zealand actually look like that? Like, yeah, it does. And the Hobbiton vision that a lot of us have in our heads is rolling hillsides that are on sort of mid to North Auckland, so New Zealand, North Island specifically. So Matamata, which is, just a little bit south of Auckland. And it's just really lush and green.
It's so green.
It's got that like beautiful morning frost that you get all like the fog that sits lower across the rolling hills. And it's just like a very beautiful farmlandy place. And that really does feel like Hobbiton to me.
Yeah.
It feels like the Shire.
Yeah, I mean, my family would always go on long road trips around the country when I was a kid, and just about the films especially kind of feel like just almost a postcard kind of history of what I remember as a kid. So you kind of, it just really does feel like a home, even though it's fantasy.
Yeah, I think for me, I was born in New Zealand, but we moved to Australia when I was like 10 or 11. So for me, watching the Lord of the Rings films was very nostalgic because that's where I really identified my home as, like Cal mentioned, sort of that like south of Auckland area being like Hobbiton. Before I'd even gone to the Hobbiton set, because I didn't do that till I was a bit older, my uncle has like a big sort of block of land in that kind of area, and I always kind of identified that as the Shire in my own mind. But even as a kid, like we're so close to all of these filming locations that like my parents had a batch, as we called them. It's like a beach house in New Zealand, and it's about an hour and a half away from Wellington. And there's a forest right there that I used to play. Like my inner child lives in that forest, and that's the forest that was Gileath, I think, was filmed in. So that's how deeply it is seated in our sort of personalities, and in our. I mean, at least for me, I can speak for myself, but I'm sure that it's for many other people on the team that this, like the place that we're building for Tales of the Shire, is really our home too.
It's also kind of funny how many people you come across that you might be talking about something random. Oh yeah, I did that on the films or whatever. And it's like just about everybody's dog in their neighbour had
Especially in Wellington.
Yeah.
Especially in Wellington, everyone, I give him a therapist was like, oh yeah, my husband worked on that. I was like, it's not you too.
Everyone knows someone.
Like nowhere is like
It's
there's
re-
no.
yeah.
It feels like there's no one in New Zealand because we're such a small country that hasn't had something to do with.
It's
with
like
creation.
it's like the Kevin Bacon 7
Yeah.
distances or something like that. Like it's 7 steps, probably like 3 steps to someone who worked on Lord of the Rings.
I mean, it's extra enhanced from being part of Wētā Workshop, right?
Yeah,
There's
and
just-
living in Miramar or
and
something.
living in Miramar. Alluded to yesterday, but just that pressure of the people that have kind of helped kind of add something significant and something culturally iconic to this world around you and with you, and that kind of puts a lot of pressure on, but also a lot of support to kind of feel like you're going in the right direction.
Yeah, no, it is. Yeah, the pressure of the IP when it's that like building something when you care so much and you've got so much history with the IP is very scary, but it's also very honouring. Like I feel so honoured to be able to work on this project, and it's so special to be able to, like I was saying at the beginning, like make a game that I would play. Make a game that is really special to me and how I've grown up and the things that I like to engage in and do.
I think speaking of like making something that we're like feeling the pressure of the IP, like I definitely feel that. But funny story, where I get my sort of Lord of the Rings geekiness from is my mum, and like many people, I have a complex relationship with my mum. But because she's such a huge fan and she's always like I mean, you know, a critical mum, but it's not just like the fans that I need to make proud. It's I have to make my mum proud of this game. Like,
Your mum
she's
will
gonna
be like
notice
in the
everything.
footnotes.
Yeah, literally. Yeah. So yeah, it's all there. Yeah.
My mum did a pretty cruel trick when I was little as well with Lord of the Rings. I wanted to watch the first movie when it came out, but I was too little, and she was like, okay, well, if you can read through the entire trilogy, you can watch the films. And I was like,
That's
okay,
a big ask
done.
for it.
I was 7.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, all right. Now, the problem was that I was a really bookish kid. I was pretty much exclusively reading like English authors who were writing in the 1950s. So Tolkien's language, okay, I had to have a dictionary beside me.
ahead on
But
that.
I was like, I got this. I've been reading Eden Blyden since I was 5. It's all good. And and so basically, like, I read through the whole thing. Probably didn't take in about 50% of it, but I did read it all. And she didn't believe me. And she quizzed me, and there's some things that I'd forgotten. And so I went back and did it again. And this went on 8 times. I read the trilogy 8 times until she was like, look, I'm sorry, but you're just too little. I didn't think we were going to get this far. Like, I genuinely didn't think that you were going to keep this up. But like, I'm answering all of her questions. Like, I can answer all of the points that she's asking. And she's like, I've been caught out. Okay, you're going to have to wait till you're 13.
Wow.
Such a bummer. I'll never let go of that.
Yeah.
But now I know Lord of the Rings really well, so, thanks, Mum.
Yeah, it's clearly important to people from New Zealand. I mean, it's part of the culture. I think Richard's talked to me a bit about this when we're talking about Lord of the Rings as one of the key themes is really about the fellowship. When I hear you speaking about the community and fellowship, just by being in the location we're being, and I guess making games is a highly collaborative kind of experience. So how do you bring that fellowship and community into making a game about the Shire?
It's a slight deviation from the question, but we've got at least one team member who's Kurt, who's a lead environment artist, and he runs a small plot up at the local community garden, and it's really interesting, kind of seeing, I guess, him and people like him bringing kind of that real life experience of working in a communal garden into the game. And I mean, the collaboration on something like this, where you do have something that is really well that the lore is so well looked after by so many people that you have to come to really collaborative outcomes that are going to not only suit the gameplay experience, but also suit those who are really passionate about certain topics.
We were talking to Middle-earth about, well, we've been talking to them every week or so for the last few years, but when we're talking to Middle-earth, the things that really come through as Tolkien's pillars, like Tolkien's passions, like the things that were very important to him were fellowship, good over evil, and we really wanted to make sure that every part of the game emphasizes that sense of community, emphasizes that sense of togetherness, emphasizes that, obviously there's not really evil in the game, just, kind of mildly annoying neighbours.
But like the Hobbit version of evil.
Yeah, the Hobbit version of evil, which is just like that neighbour who turns
Being
on their
rude.
weed eater at 6 a.m. But basically the string of fellowship and the string of good over evil and the string of like the space of the Shire was how we sort of framed so much of the game, that we completely framed the game around that. And so relationships are a really important part of the game and of your progression, and that's like a lot of how you get your tales of the Shire. Spoils, there are stories in our game, there are tales, is through these connections that you're making with people, and through that sense of fellowship, and through being able to bring a community of hobbits and a dwarf together, and just revitalize things, being able to relate individually to characters as well as being able to relate to the group. There's lots of stories as well about relationships. There's relationships between fathers and daughters, there's relationships between brothers and sisters, there's relationships between, the player and all of these people. And I think that, that sense of like all these different types of people coming together to create one community, really special to us. Kat, maybe you want to talk a bit more about the relationship.
Oh, sure, yeah. So being a game about fellowship, and sort of, again, on the food is love thing, like sharing meals with your friends, we have sort of what I call kind of an ensemble cast of, I think there's sort of 12 to 13 different NPC characters that you can build relationships with. And our narrative team has spared no expense expanding on these relationships that not only, like Cal said, not only the relationships you have with those characters, but their relationships between each other, and how you can explore that and find those really cool underlying themes and find what's going on for that Hobbit in their life at this time and that kind of thing. Yeah.
I don't think it's too much of a spoiler because it's the first thing we come across in the game, but the initial kind of start of the game is that is this going to spoil anything? I'll hold on that one.
We're getting there.
I'll get myself in trouble.
That was so close.
No, it's okay.
It's about building community.
Yeah.
I guess we're coming to like the end of the time. I mean, what's the one thing you'd like to share about the Shire with, I guess, our new players?
Oh my
We
God.
don't really know where to start.
One thing is hard.
Yeah, one
Yep.
thing's tricky. There's one specific tale that I will mention. I give this one a shout out often, but it is a stargazing tale in the game, and it's not like it's not part of a big important beat. It's not even really part of the main arc. It's sort of like a side thing that you may happen upon, and it's such like stargazing in the Shire. It's just such a beautiful moment for me. Like that moment in particular is just so magical. It also reminds me of some really special movies to me when I was a kid, certain stargazing scenes, and yeah, I think that being able to share like a really beautiful unpolluted night sky with the player, love it.
The one special thing for me, I think, is that I really feel like everyone that has worked on the game has poured a lot of love and energy into every aspect they've worked on. And I know that's, a lot of people would say that about any game they work on, but in this case it really does feel that way. And I think in the same way that I think with the films, there was so much love and energy poured into every last detail, and we wanted to, I guess, honour that kind of love and emphasis on things and put, a bit of ourselves into every aspect. And I know it's not one thing, but it's just spread throughout the game, really.
Like the story of the individual hand stitching of each leaf onto the tree. Like that was like people were actually doing that for the films. So can you imagine how much pressure we feel to pour all of our love into this video game, and we do.
I think for me, something that I would want players to know is that being someone who loves like Easter eggs, like I've tried to, me and the narrative team in general have tried to sort of, and kind of the whole team, inject as many of those little tiny tidbits that if you're looking for them and then but without it like hitting you over the head, being like, hey, like here's a cool Easter egg, hope you got that one. Like we let you be smart about it, and we let you have this so many moments right from the outside of the game where you're like, oh yeah, I know about this, I know about that, down to like the achievements. I did all of those, so the titles of them all relate to something in the books, which I think is a really fun little addition, and I hope that people like it.
Actually, that just sparked one other thought. There's in the narrative, there's some lovely moments that again, unless you know where things are going in the future, you might miss them. But there's some they've woven in some really beautiful moments that just speak to the future of these characters and their relationships. And
That's true, because we do have characters that people may be familiar with. If they are, the characters aren't exactly Easter eggs, but they're kind of close, I guess, because if you know where they end up being in the Lord of the Rings, or if you know where they came from the Hobbit, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I guess we could wrap it up now. Do we have opportunity for questions at all?
I would love questions.
Yeah. Might have to speak a bit louder. I can't see the microphones out there.
We can see some movement happening.
we've got one down there.
Or come to, I don't know.
Do we have anything mic'd up for questions or not?
We'll repeat the question.
We'll repeat
Shout.
it if people.
Yeah, we'll try and remember to repeat it.
I have a question about sort of what area of the Shire are we mainly focusing on?
So the question was what area of the Shire we're focusing on, and that would be Bywater. It is specifically a suburb of the Shire.
Suburb.
Just
If they
across
had
the
suburbs,
way.
it would be a suburb.
I know. It's just the best way to describe it.
It's true. I get
Where's
it.
Bywater?
It's an outer suburb.
We talked a little bit about this yesterday, but we investigated whether we would go further than Bywater, whether we would go up to the hill, or whether off to
Hobbiton or
Hobbiton and all
Bree,
those kind of
yeah.
Bree and those areas. But
And then the producer said no.
producer says no. But it wasn't just like a scope thing. It was also kind of a focus thing. We
Yes.
wanted this feeling of like this, not inward-facing community, but just kind of,
Insular, small town.
a
kind of
smaller
vibe.
town area that
Yeah.
was more focused on what was going on here and less focused on the wider world. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly,
So
yeah.
it kind of speaks to
Yeah.
that. So.
And
Hobbits literally only talk, like, it's so classic, like Gandalf walks by and everyone's like, oh, scowl faces, like, oh, who the hell, like
That
this
guy
guy
again.
again, it's so weird, like, what is he doing? It's like, he was just here, like, he was just over the neighbouring way, it doesn't matter. But there's that sort of like feeling of like, can everyone just leave our little space alone, please, so that we can just get on with being really cute and cozy. So yeah, keeping it relatively small and contained really made sense.
I can see another hand up over here.
Okay.
Oh, there's a mic.
Oh,
Oh,
good
mic.
mic.
There is a mic.
Hello. Coming from, I guess, Wētā's work background of like a visual effects studio, I guess what's been more so the challenges adapting to, I guess, a game studio, environment?
I mean, a few of us have come directly from, being around Wētā for a long time, and other people we've kind of brought in. So we started doing games back in 2013 on other properties, and we've sort of added people in as we've needed to kind of build the game studio as it is now. So it's really just been looking for people who enhance the kind of the Wētā ethos, but also have the skills to build games rather than props. So we've always brought in people that have got specialties, whether it's leatherwork or sword making or whatever. And in this case, it's making games. So
The team before, it was previously we were called Interactive and now we're called Game Studio, but the team previously was working in like emergent tech, like really innovative tech, and I think that really leans to what Wētā Workshop does as a whole. Like there's a really heavy focus on innovation and doing something really differently for the first time. And so I think there was like a bit of a challenge to move to making like the first sort of like commercial standardy video game where it's like, no, it's not just about like pushing every boundary or like, is this the most interesting way this has ever been done? It's about creating this kind of experience. So I think there was there's always a sort of standard as well, like films and games have quite similar language, but the words mean different things. So we have a design department at Workshop.
But they have no idea what I do.
Yeah, they're incredible concept art. They're absolutely world class. They're stunning.
Yeah.
And then you have to go, okay, so game design is like spreadsheets and where like Kat's like, okay, this is how I'm placing foraging.
trying to find the balance between like explaining like my job to a complete layperson and explaining my job to someone who's also in the games industry. Finding somewhere in the middle to find that common language is quite challenging, but yeah.
Yeah, because sometimes you think you're speaking the same language and you're not, because again, same words but slightly different meanings. So there's things like that which I think are actually, it's very interesting as well to be able to like play on those things. So for example, like in games as well, there's voice acting it's a bit of a faff. It's a hassle. If you need to do updates and stuff, you need to get that same voice actors, you need localization. There's a lot of stuff, right? Whereas, I don't know, blowing up helicopters, super cheap. In games, like we can blow up helicopters, no
the
worries.
things that you think are really hard are kind of easy, and it's always the other way around.
Exactly. So like I'll blow up 10 million helicopters for you if you want, like it's fine. Whereas voice acting, like, oh, you want me to put voice acting in? Like, okay. So there's like things like that which are completely opposite in film, and the cost and time it takes to do different things, and the sort of like assumptions that both sides would have around that stuff is just different.
Yeah.
There's also a methodology difference. Like in film, there is a lot of cheating going on, right? Your special effects and visual effects are all about, cheating things from the point of view of the camera. Like, at the end of the day, what matters is what's on that frame. Whereas, the minute someone says, right, well, I'm going to take the camera and I'm going to put it here, and you're like, that's not how I wanted to frame it.
Steve's like, I've seen
Stop
Steve,
turning the camera.
Like, don't zoom in that close. Like, I don't want them to see that close to the head.
And also, looking in close, you kind of, you might engineer things to be kind of seen from a certain distance and perspective, and then the minute you allow for that kind of interactivity and player agency, it's quite a different mindset to get into.
Yeah. And even from a production standpoint, right, like film is like quite like A to B, like you plan out the entire thing and then you go ahead and do it. And in games, you have to iterate, you have to find fun, you have to keep, we just work in a very...
It's iterative rather than...
It's
point A to
iterative
point B.
rather than predictive. It's just a different way of building stuff.
Do we have any more questions? Oh, we do. Go.
Hey.
So I've got a joke question and a serious question. The joke question is, how many times do you think you read through specifically concerning hobbits?
A lot.
So many times.
Yeah, I can tell you that like on my desk is like I've got like my books on my desk at work, and they've all got like little sticky notes on them because when I first came onto the team, I came in as sort of a quest mission design narrative kind of focused designer, and then sort of due to the requirements of the project, I kind of moved towards systems. But coming in, I was immediately so much fun to work with Darren. He was really awesome to bring me on board, but. His rule was kind of like, when you're coming up with ideas, he's like, you can do it if you can find it in the book. So I was constantly like looking through, being like, oh, I want to do this, I want to do that thing, I want to reference that. And we're always having to go back. But Concerning Hobbits is definitely one that we come back to
it's really nice
very
you just
regularly.
decided to like have like a little booklet
Have a
in
little
the front
read,
of the whole
yeah.
long book that was like, by the way, here's everything that you'll ever need to know about hobbits. Cool.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah, it was
thank you.
very kind of Tolkien to do that for us.
That's really, that's great. Thanks.
Yeah.
The serious question is, actually, you would have taken a lot of inspiration from like Stardew and Harvest Moon and all that. What's the most surprising game you think you took inspiration from? Like the most non-life sim kind of game?
I think as a designer, it's my job to bring in as many different, draw on all of the experiences that I've had as a player and as a designer in other games. So like, one that I can think of is like, we were doing a bit of a redesign of the cooking system around like the beta mark, and I had to like analyze that system and look at, okay, how is this serving our player, how is it serving our macro, like all of those things. And we wanted to like zhuzh it, like inject it and make it a lot more engaging and more fun. And I had to draw, like I'm a huge survival game fan, so I was like looking at like when you're doing cooking in survival games, because it's kind of what I think of, like what kind of things are you doing. So I was looking at like cooking in Green Hell, cooking in the forest, like all of these random little things, and it sounds like not cozy at all, but there's so much that we can draw on from the whole, like across the gamut of every game genre that we can pull in. And I know that myself, when I'm thinking of like how do I want things to look, how do I want the player to engage with them, we have a resource which some of you might know about, but it's like the game UI library online, and you can literally look up any UI of almost like, I think there's like 48,000 entries in that database now. But I can go on there and be like, oh, what does the UI look like in that game again? And I can go and check it without having to like go and play the game. So as long as it's like in my brain, I can go and find it. So yeah, there's wide amount of like random inspiration, because it can come from anywhere, and when you blend it with the right things, it can turn out to be really cool.
I think horror games can be cozy. There's definitely some types of horror games or like dark survival games that I think are cozy, because the darkness that you're in like implies like, when you're nice and warm, there's like that difference between the like harsh outside and you get to feel really cozy inside. Yeah. Like everything that you were saying is just like it's a really great like talking about the way that we really loved that lore, and we really wanted to explore all those different games as well, and how we can sort of, I guess, like take different angles while we're making Tales of the Shire. So it's not just a like clone of something that everyone's seen before, but with hobbits skimmed over the top. Like that would feel pretty bad. One reference that I can think of is I was working on a fishing game before Tales, and I was playing a lot of the really like hardcore accurate sports fishing games,
like Bass
like,
Pro Fishing.
Whatever, I can't remember the names of them now, but like whatever like the Euro Truck Simulator is of fishing games, like I was playing a lot of that, and that is a pretty strong design reference for the way that we've done fishing. I don't know, maybe some people find that cozy, but it's not exactly what I am thinking of as like a cozy game. There's lots of things like that.
Good mechanics can come from almost anywhere.
Yeah.
I know that we have a question in the front here, but I'm not sure where the mic's got to.
Yeah.
Okay.
G'day. So you've mentioned like gardening and fishing mechanics and that sort of thing. Do you have any game mechanics that are going to be around like smoking long modern leaf or having your own pipe or brewing your own ale and that sort of stuff?
We've had this conversation so much, like,
Argued over.
yeah, those are really
amongst the
Hobbity
team.
things, but we really wanted this game to be for everyone. And in order to do that, we have to be conscious of ratings and children and not encouraging children to smoke.
Or drink alcohol.
Yeah, or drink, or yeah. So
Plus the kind of like tenuous connections to weed and all the rest.
Yeah.
yeah. It's pipe weed is tobacco. Talking,
That's the rules.
talking said in Concerning Hobbits, but still the name
That's
is
true.
yeah. And then the other with like obviously like we wanted to still have those taverns and inns, right? Like they're really important. We've got some pretty important classic spaces in the game that are pubs. So yeah, we've taken the sort of like butterbeer, ginger beer kind of approach to work with that. But yeah, sadly, no pipe weed.
Okay, one last question.
Okay.
So
I actually do have two. What was your like favorite aspect to making the game? Like, what little item or thing did you like to add that you liked when you added it to the game?
Mine's not an item, but it's not really a quest, but we have like areas in the, I'm going to say moments because we literally just called them moments in the game, which is kind of like a, when you find it in the world, you can interact with like the little sparkles, but you kind of have a monologue. It's a bit like a haiku in Ghost of Tsushima, where you have sort of a monologue with yourself. And one of the first things that I got to work on, like the first piece of content that I did for the game, was a little a moment which I won't spoil for you because one day you'll find it. But yeah, working on like being able to add to the canon like so like soon, it was like a really scary moment, but it was really cool to have the whole team kind of come around me and be like, yeah, that was really cool, like that's awesome, it's in the game now. So that's kind of my favorite thing.
It's really hard to pick out one thing, but I think we talked about the kind of the Hobbit scale of everything, and one thing I really wanted was, as far as an ornament, was like a human-sized boot that you would sit there and either grow a plant in or have as this doorstop or whatever. But to me, it was like having that, when you run around as this character for so long and you don't have anything to compare your scale against, you just start to feel like, you know, that's normal, your normal size. But then when you come across Gandalf or other things, it all of a sudden kind of gives you that kind of frame of reference. I mean, we tried to kind of make sure that things like fruit and apples and all those things had a sort of more, you know, real world comparative scale to the Hobbits, but there's something about just a great big boot that just sits there that just kind of, it's just a little subtle reminder.
yeah, I don't really know what favourite would be, but that one I remember having user tests and people being like, the fish are so big. Like, yeah, you have to remember that these people are like 4 foot. Like they're really little guys. So the scale it's very, very cool. It's really hard to pick one favourite. It's very, very, that's really challenging. I think being able to, probably the seasonality of the game for me. I grew up going to a kind of weird school. Well, firstly, I grew up like half rurally. My grandmother had a dairy farm. So I grew up like with seasons being important to me and like really meaning something in terms of like what we do in X season, what we do in Y season. And then I also went to a Waldorf school, which is also very heavily in the what we do in this season. You know, like we have the harvest festival and we're going to do harvesty things. We're going to make pumpkin soup. We're going to celebrate what the world is doing right now and our place in it. And I feel like the way that comes through in Tales is really gorgeous. Like my favourite screenshots are the screenshots in autumn or fall, depending on where you are. And I think the way that we've managed to like build in that seasonality and those celebrations in that kind of community, like there's nothing cozier than like a winter night and then being in the Green Dragon, you know, like it just feels real good. So yeah, seasons.
Okay, I'll end it there. Tale of the Shire comes out on 25th of March 2025 on Xbox, PlayStation, Switch, PC, and through Netflix games. Hope you will enjoy it.
Before we go, we need to get a picture with Ladle.
Oh yeah.